Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so we can start the second part. Okay, in the second part, I want to introduce some machine learning basics and how we can create the machine learning workflow using Galaxy. Of course, I don't have enough time to go into the details. I just give you a quite brief overview of the machine learning tasks, and then we will go to the next part for the hands-on session and try to use this machine learning algorithm for data analysis. In many of the research and many of the data analysis, we want to predict something. I mean, you have some objects or data from the objects, and you want to do a prediction. For example, with the features of the patient, with the data related to the disease, you want to predict is this patient diabetic or not. This prediction in different areas is maybe most important challenge in data analysis. Before machine learning, before we develop machine learning techniques and model to handle these prediction issues, most of the application was expert system. It was based on an expert, and we called it expert-defined systems. And in contrast, we have another approach, we call it data-driven approach. In data-driven approach, such as data mining or machine learning models, we are handling data and trying to build a model using data. But in the expert-defined models, such as this image you can see, at the first step, we extract knowledge from an expert. And after we extract knowledge from an expert, we should use knowledge representation techniques. For example, this most well-known approach for knowledge representation can be a rule-based system. I mean, you can formulate, you can represent the knowledge of the expert as a rules. And based on these rules, you can build your knowledge base. So the main part of the expert system is knowledge base and knowledge acquisition from an expert. With this knowledge base, you can ask a query as a non-expert user from this expert system, and this expert system will provide some advices. For providing these advices, we need inference engine. I mean, for example, if you use rules, some rules in some inference mechanism or inference methods for extracting new knowledge from the existing knowledge based on logic, for example. So this inference engine can extract the knowledge and the suitable knowledge from this knowledge base. And of course, non-expert users don't know about the knowledge base, about the inference engine, so we should provide a user interface for the users. So the user can ask the query via this user interface and just see the advices. But at the behind, we have these two parts. It is an intelligence system, but it is expert defined. In the early decades on developing artificial intelligence in decade 18s and beginning of 90s, almost every intelligence system was an expert system. But these days, because we have enough data to build a model, based on this data, we go through data-driven models. And machine learning techniques are data-driven models. And the goal of machine learning is to build the prediction function. If you want to predict something in your research areas, the goal of machine learning is do this prediction by building some functions. How we can build these functions? We have observing data, I mean the learning data or the data you want to use for your analysis. So based on this data, you should build prediction functions. But these functions are challengeable. It's not a simple mathematical function. So instead of just implementing this function, we are gonna learn the function from this observation data. In machine learning approaches, we have two different phases. First phase is the training phase. In training phase, you have observation data. You see here the data. And you are going to build a model based on machine learning algorithms. So you use and apply machine learning algorithms to build a model. Here is the learned model. In the second phase, in the prediction phase, you have some data, test data, not the observed data. And you want to use this learned model to predict. You mean you apply the learned model to the test data, unseen data, and do the prediction. So we need two data sets. And in the hands-on, you will see how we can handle these two data sets together. And machine learning algorithms and techniques give computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. And these methods can learn from the data and make the prediction without knowing the rules, maybe. Sometimes it is very difficult to you to define a rule between this data and prediction. There are many applications in machine learning area, such as computer vision, something related to the vision, related to the image, for image recognition, for example, vehicle tracking, application of machine learning in natural language processing. For example, if you want to do machine learning translation, translate a sentence from one language to the other language, you need to build a natural language processing model. I think somebody want to join us. Okay. Yeah, if you want to build a machine learning, build a translation automatic translator, you need to apply machine learning in natural language processing for intelligent human-computer interaction. You need NLP, or for summarization. For example, if you give a text to the machine and you want to summarize it in 2 or 3 pages, natural language processing techniques should be applied. In speech processing, you have a huge variety of machine learning application in speaker recognition, in speech recognition, in speech synthesis to create a speech based on a text. In robotics, for robotic road mapping, for example, in playing games, it is an interesting area that machine learning can be used. For example, Deep Blue is a computer designed, and the algorithm, the state-of-the-art algorithm, are recently used to play chess against the computer. And of course, in bioinformatics is the most important part of the application in your research area. In bioinformatics also, we have a variety and huge variety of machine learning methods used for protein structure prediction, for drug response prediction, for gene expression identification, even for gene expression data prediction, gene expression prediction, for extracting gene regulatory networks of. If you are handling images, you can use machine learning for biomedical image analysis to find the tumor or to compare two biomedical images to each other. There are a variety of applications in bioinformatics as well that you can use machine learning to solve this problem. Here you can see a classical machine learning workflow. The machine learning workflow starts from raw data. In your wet lab experiment or whatever you are doing at the first step, you should have data to analyze. And maybe you produce data by own in your research lab, or maybe you are using available data sets. So you start your analysis from raw data. In this raw data, there are some noises usually, and maybe you have missing values, maybe you have unreliable data in this raw data. So there are some techniques to clean your data. We call it pre-processing techniques for data cleaning. You can remove noise remove outliers and non-reliable data in this pre-processing step. It is possible that you impute unknown values regard the available values. Sometimes you have a missing value for one feature of your data. It is possible that you fill this missing value based on the available data. So pre-processing is very important in all tasks, and it is depend on your data. It is depend on what you are going to do with your data, and many techniques and huge variety of techniques are using for this pre-processing. For example, in single cell data analysis, you should do some pre-processing, but for macroarray data analysis, maybe it's not useful to apply the single cell data analysis approaches to pre-processing. So it is kind of depend on your data and your research field, this pre-processing. For example, in chemoinformatics, sometimes when you are handling SMILES data, a compound of drugs, sometimes you have a duplicate and you should remove one of them. But in the other area, maybe never this duplicate happen. After you create your clean data, you should extract useful features. And it is another important part of this workflow, feature extraction part. Maybe all the features are not necessary to use in your workflow, and you should find the most relevant features from your data. And maybe some of these features have correlation with each other, and if you have one of them, no need to keep the other, and you can easily remove it from your data. So this feature extraction or feature engineering is the second phase that you apply for your clean data to extract the useful features. When you extract your features, reliable features, the next step, you will build your model, apply some training algorithms to build a specific model. We will talk about the model. And after you build your model, as you see in the previous slide, you will use the test data to do the prediction. But it is really important for you to evaluate your model and interpret the results. So the evaluation and the measures for this evaluation and visualization techniques is very important to demonstrate the results and evaluate the results and to know how good your trained model. So this pre-processing, feature engineering, model selection, training, learning, and evaluation are the main steps of a classical machine learning workflow. For the learning and evaluation, data sets split to two parts. First, the training, and the second is the test part. So if you have complete data sets in your research lab, in your wet lab, you should split it in two parts. First for the training and the second for the test part. I mean, you use this training part to build a model, to compare the different models to each other, but this test part is for the generalization. You should know how can be generalized this model and apply this test data to prediction, and based on the prediction you can evaluate your results. Most of the time when you don't have a separate training data and test part, it's recommended that 75% of data can go to the training part and the remaining 25% can be a test part. But in these hands-on today, we will give you two different data sets, one for training and the other for the test. But in your real research, you need to divide your this data set to different parts. It's very important. We have some variants for the machine learning algorithm. Most famous variants are supervised methods or supervised algorithm in machine learning and unsupervised. In supervised algorithms, we are going to learn with the labeled training data sets. For example, you have some emails and you want to classify the email by your intelligent classifier into two categories, to the normal emails or to the spams. As you see, maybe in Gmail, when you receive an email, some of them go to the spam parts. So you should learn the model based on this labeled training one. I mean, you have some training data, you know these are the spam. For example, user click it and report it as a spam, sorry. And you can learn your model based on this spam and non-spam emails. And after that, you can classify a new email to these two classes. We call this classification. So classification is a category of algorithm fall into the supervised learning category. The other area of supervised algorithm is a regression. For example, you want to predict the house price. You want to predict the gene expression value based on your data. You don't want to classify the data into different classes. You want just to find a real value for a predicted value, prediction value. So this category is the regression part. The other category of the machine learning algorithms is the unsupervised method. In unsupervised method, you want to discover patterns in unlabeled data. For example, you have many different text documents, and you want to cluster these documents into the different categories or clusters. It is unsupervised. For example, you download some articles related to your domain of expertise, and you see, oh, in this folder, in this, or in my desktop, I have 100 articles, and I should categorize them in different category, but it is not labeled. It is not predefined the labels. So you are the one who find the similarity between these articles and categorize them in different categories, in, or example, in different folders. And as you know, yeah, it does not make sense if you categorize each of them in one folder. After that, you will have 100 folder, and in each folder you have one paper. And also, it is not a good idea if you put all of them in one folder. So how can we find the best number of clusters based on our data? Maybe it is a big challenge in single cell data analysis. You have data from single cells, and you want to categorize the cells in different areas. And with this categorization, with this clustering, you can interpret your data, and maybe the related or similar cells are the functionally similar cells. I mean, they do the same function. It is very important, at least in single cell data analysis that I mentioned. So we have classification and regression, regression in supervised techniques and clustering in unsupervised. And I will try to cover these three: classification, regression, and clustering in this workshop with three different training materials. The other method can be reinforcement learning that I didn't cover in this workshop. It is a reinforcement learning, and it is not based on a training with label or unlabeled. In reinforcement learning, mostly used, for example, in games, you do an action, and based on a reward or punishment of the action, you try to improve your action. And after some iteration, you will find out the best action based on this feedback and reward. We call it reinforcement learning, and we won't cover in this workshop. I will give you more details about these three different categories. For example, in a regression problem, it is a simple problem. How much should you sell your house for? You decide to sell your house. How much is the price? To do this prediction, you need some information, some data about the houses, your neighbors maybe, and the feature of the houses. How old is the house? And where is the house located? And how big is the house? These are relative features to the price of the house. So you have some data. It is a data set. And at the next step, you learn a relationship between these features and the price. For simplicity, we can imagine the price of a house only related to the size. So you have X dimension for a size, and Y dimension is a predicted value for the house. So you should learn a mapping from X space to the Y space, from the feature space to the prediction space. And this relationship is a regression, and you are solving a regression problem, and you finally predict the Y value, and usually Y value is a continuous value, and the aim of the regression is this prediction. Your mapping can be seen here as a fitting curve. These are the data points, and it is the fitting curve. Fitting curve can be a linear or non-linear. Here you have a linear fitting curve, and in these two examples you have non-linear. If you use linear fitting curve or linear algorithm, your regression will be linear regression. But if you want to use this non-linear mapping, your regression will be a non-linear regression. And we call these algorithms to build this mapping and to build this model are the regressors. And these two categories have different regressors that we use in this hands-on. In the linear regressor, for example, here, you want to find the best line because it is a linear, it is a line, it is a linear mapping between this point. You should find the best line, and to find this best line, you should find these parameters. I mean the weight of this line and the coefficient for these features. Weight are the coefficient of the features. You will build a linear model. This linear regressor is the simplest regressor. You can start your modeling by the simplest, by the linear one. It is simple and fast, but the problem is in most of the data analysis, there is not any linear relationship between the features and the prediction value. Most of them have this non-linear relationship, and the linear regressor cannot model this relationship as well as non-linear one. And in the advanced machine learning or regressor models, we use ensemble models. And the idea of ensemble model is combination of multiple regressor, for example, decision trees. And for example, each of these one is the weak regressor, such as decision tree, and we use this prediction based on this one. This is a combination, maybe the aggregation of this prediction. For example, you can predict the C value based on each of these trees. And we have 30 different regressors. It is an ensemble method. You can sum all these CI1 to CI30 and divide them by 30. I mean, find the average value for the CI. It is maybe the simple way to ensemble technique in the regressor. We will show you how you can apply these ensemble methods in Galaxy, but it is the idea behind it, combination of the multiple regressors. The other category is the classification algorithms or techniques. You have some images and you want to decide, is it a cat or dog? Here you see you should learn again a relationship between the data and category or the class labels. You extract features from data. You have raw data is your image. As you know, it's usually recorded as a matrix in your data set. You should create some features from this data set, from the images, and the aim of the classification is find this important line. We call it boundary line. With this boundary line, you can divide the data into two classes. So in the test phase, when you have unseen data, you just extract the features and see in which part of the plan it falls. So you can say if it is here in top of this line, it's blind to first class. If not, it's blind to the second class. It means it is cat or not. So you want to predict a Y, and Y usually is a label for the class. In classification, the aim is find these decision boundaries. These decision boundaries can be linear. For example, here you have a line for dividing the data samples to different classes. So you use linear classification methods. And here it is not possible to use linear classification to divide the samples into two categories. It is in your real problems, in your real challenges, most of the time you can't apply the linear classification. So we go to the non-linear boundary lines, and non-linear classifiers can be useful in these cases. And we call the algorithms classifier. The simple classifier is logistic regression, and based on this probability value, you can find a boundary, a linear boundary, a line between two classes. And the aim of this classifier is finding a weight and bias for the line. We will see and start from the logistic regression and see the result and how we can divide the data into categories using these linear classifiers. But further, in the next step, we can use some kernel methods, some support vector machines. It is a binary classifier, and the idea is finding the best and optimal hyperplane for the decision boundary. We call these vectors, these samples support vector, and this is the optimal hyperplane that divides these samples into two classes. Usually the classic support vector machine divides the data into binary, but we can extend it or use it some modified version or modified algorithm for learning to apply it for more than two classes. And similar to the regression, you can use the ensemble techniques, for example, a random forest technique. In random forest technique, you can use simple decision trees and ensemble them, combine these together to find the best class. And the idea is each of these classifier give you a label of this class, and the final class label is the majority voting between these classes. You know, in the classification, we want to predict a label, a value for the label. So the averaging or max is not makes sense in this case. We use the majority voting to find the final class label. The third category of algorithm are the clustering algorithms. For example, I want to segment an image. You have this image and you want to segment it, find different segments in this image. Or in my example, you have data from different cells in single cell data analysis, and you want to segment or categorize these cells into different categories. So the input is raw pixels or raw data, and you want to separate into different categories. For example, here you see the blue, orange, blue, and green categories for the three categories. And if you find these categories, based on these categories, you can segment your image into these three different regions. It is unsupervised because we don't have any label for the data. As you see, we can apply different machine learning techniques in our data analysis, but don't forget, still we need your domain expertise. For example, for defining tasks and finding the best matrices for evaluation, we need experts to evaluate and propose the evaluating matrices. And most of the time, the labeling part and this hand labeling part of the training data sets is very time consuming and expensive part, because you need experts to annotate this data in wet lab data, for example. And some of them maybe, some of the tasks maybe take ages to this label, to do this proper labeling, because for the machine learning, if you want to apply supervised learning for the prediction and other purposes, you need this labeled training data sets, and you need expert to produce this data. And for designing features, most of the time you have plenty of features and you don't know which one is useful for your prediction and you should keep it, and which one is not related to the topic and you can remove easily from your data set. So expert can give you a hint and idea about this designing best features and feature engineering. And at the end, when you do your prediction or machine learning data analysis, you need an expert to interpret your result or find the reason for the result, or you give you an idea how you can improve your analysis. So still you need these experts in your analysis. For example, in my idea, when you want to categorize samples into different categories, into the tumor cells and the normal cells, is a 70% accuracy is the good result or not? Machine learning people or data analysis maybe don't have an idea if 70% is good or not, but the expert can say, yeah, it's okay, and yes, but in some applications maybe 90% is quite bad result. So don't forget, we need experts still. As we mentioned in the first introduction part, we have this subdomain ml.usegalaxy.eu for machine learning, and hopefully I'm trying to build my community in the machine learning in different areas. My aim is give a simple introduction and give and simplify as possible the concepts for the biologist, for the chemist, for the people who do data analysis in different areas, such as climate change data analysis for their own prediction, and they don't have enough knowledge about the details and background of this algorithm. So I'm trying to build my community to collaborate to each other to do the productive results. And this is one step to this aim, ml.usegalaxy.eu, and you can see some work. If you go there, you can see some training materials and the categorized tools, and we are still developing and adding more and more training materials and tools, especially in deep learning area. And yeah, you can use workflows in Galaxy to design your workflow. For example, here you can use your data ensemble methods and set the parameters for it, and build the model and use the other data sets to do the prediction. And here it is possible to visualize the prediction, for example, with plot actual and residual curve and residual plots. And so it is possible that you use this Galaxy workflow to build your machine learning specific workflows. And in deep learning in Galaxy, we submit a paper, and you can see in bioRxiv a version of our paper. It is a accessible, reproducible, and scalable machine learning for biomedicine, and it is a description. I hopefully it's enough for the users to know what is inside the ML in Galaxy. And there are some use cases in the different areas. We try to use Galaxy EU to reproduce the data analysis, and some of the use cases are captured from the Nature publication, and we try to use the Galaxy for reproduce the results and compare the result with the original one. You can see this paper. And as I mentioned, there are some training materials, age prediction using machine learning, basic of machine learning, and for the classification, clustering, and regression, we have a separate training material, and also our first introduction to deep learning training. And thank you for your attention. If you have any question about the background, machine learning, feel free to ask. I understand maybe some of you are from the different concept, different research area, and these machine learning concepts are new for you. So please feel free and ask, and I will try to answer you.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
When you were talking about the features that we need to select them, could you give examples of what a feature can be? I know it depends on the data that you're handling, but for a specific project.
Yeah, for a specific project, for example, you want one of my paper is finding the best feature to categorize the data to different categories. The first class is the normal cells, and the second is the cancer cells. For each sample, you have different gene expression values. Yeah, maybe 20,000 expression for each gene. In this case, feature engineering is finding the more relevant features or genes to best separate these samples into two classes. Maybe some of the genes are not relevant to this classification, and it is not a differential genes between these two other. In this case, finding or it can be done automatically or manually, this feature engineering, or have an algorithm to find the genes that best separate these two categories can be one of this example for this feature engineering. Or you want to predict if a compound is toxic or non-toxic. You can have a SMILE file for the drugs, or in general for the compounds, and you can use some predictors, and they create maybe 2,000 different chemical or physical property of the compounds. But which one is more relevant to the drug toxicity? It is the feature engineering. It can be done either manually, I mean using the expert who is data. Yeah, maybe the number of hydrogen binds is important in toxicity, so it is a very important feature, or there are some algorithms to find the best feature based on the data, not using the experts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yeah, Claudia.
How I choose the algorithm to use?
Oh, yeah, it's very good and challengeable question. Which algorithm you should use? And if we go into the hands-on parts, even more challengeable question, and how you can tune the parameter of the algorithm. There is not any straightforward answer for this question. And of course, I can recommend you, and I can compare these algorithms to each other. For example, if for some algorithms you need to have much data, some of the methods are good with noisy data, and they are not so, some of them are not so much robust. There are some features related to the algorithm, and it is better you know to decide, because if you know you have a noisy data sets, you should go to the models that's robust to the noise. Or if you have not enough data, you can choose one of the model that can learn as good as possible with this low amount of data, because sometimes it is very hard to produce much data in your case. But as a practical guide, I can tell you some more famous models and ask you to start from the simplest model and try to improve it and go further with the more nonlinear and state-of-the-art model. I don't recommend you try plenty of algorithms. For example, random forest or support vector machines are producing good results with normal amount of data. And if you are going to learn this non-linearity with the features, random forest is quite good, at least at the beginning. But if you want to use some modified or a specific algorithm, such as, for example, light GBM that machine learning guys use for their data analysis, you should know a little bit about the background of these algorithms and the approach. But as a person that you want to use the machine learning as a kind of black box, and you want to know every details of an algorithm, I recommend you start from the most simplest, even linear algorithm, and go further. For example, in the regression, you can go to the ensemble methods, and for example, the gradient boosting techniques. And for the classification as well, you can use, for example, random forest as an ensemble method.
Thank you.
And I tried to this training materials to do these steps. We will start with the simplest model and go further and see the difference in the result. Any other question? Okay. If you don't have question, two important things. First, all of you should have a Galaxy EU account right now. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and no problem when you are logging in your account. Please check. If you have any problem, I can ask the support team